Well, the Jets have a new plan at running back, but somebody who wants to go by the old plan is going to be affected in Breece Hall. We'll talk about that and more from around the NFL in just a second.
The barbershop is open and Tony Wiggins has a chair for you. He's ready with some real NFL talk. The local experts of Locked On bring their expertise, and Wiggy is ready with his clippers and shears. Sit down and enjoy. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Somebody said, you kidding me? It's Monday already. It seems like the weekend always flies by. That's because Locked On NFL is already locked and loaded on Monday, man. And we get here really, really quick. This is Monday. Of course, that means Julian Council from Locked On Panthers is here with me today. And we'll do what we always do here on Locked On NFL. And that is give it to you like you can't get nowhere else. Make sure you tap in wherever you get your podcast, whether you watch or listen, to ensure that you do not miss an episode. Today is brought to you by Monarch Money. Man, take control of your finances. That's right. I really mean that. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. And hello to the everydayers. Let me tell you what the everydayers get by tuning in. We're going to end the show, talk about how the Titans pulled the plug on the Sanders workout. Is that as bad as it sounds? We'll go through that together. The Panthers getting love from inside the NFC South. Got some surprises with that. We just go introduce the same person that you're sitting there looking at right now, and that's Julian Council. But at the top of the show, Jets plan at running back might be best for Hall. I don't think Breece Hall thinks that sharing carries is going to help him during the contract year, Julian. But yeah, this is what happens when you take over a new regime like Coach Glenn. Aaron Glenn is coming in. You got a player in a contract year, and it doesn't necessarily seem like the way you want to move will jive with the way that he wants to move.
Yeah, I mean, that's always the difficulty of this business. The people that bring you in are not always going to be the people who are necessarily your boss moving forward. And we've seen that with that regime change up in New York. And coming back from what they did in Detroit, you look at it, that two-back system. And that's been really the popular thing to do in the NFL. We're not doing a lot of workhorse backs anymore in the league. So, yeah, for Breece Hall, just what the reality of the situation is he's got to make the best of it. And there's still an opportunity to make some money after this year, even if he's going to have to share some carries.
Yep, you're right about that. So we're going to get with John Lee Bushko up at Locked On Jets. Let's just get an idea of what they're thinking about doing with that pick, and we'll try to mix that with the talk that Aaron Glenn wants to have running back by committee in New York.
So the first mock draft I wanted to look at was by Field Yates of ESPN. And Yates has the Jets picking Armand Membu out of Missouri. He's a tackle, 7th overall. Now, the first 6 players chosen are Cam Ward, the quarterback out of Miami, Abdul Carter, the edge rusher from Penn State, Shedeur Sanders, the quarterback from Colorado, Travis Hunter, the wide receiver and corner from Colorado, Mason Graham, the defensive tackle from Michigan, and Ashton Genty, the running back from Boise State. So this is interesting on a couple of levels. First of all, according to Field Yates, according to Field Yates' mock draft, the Jets would pass on the wide receiver Ted McMillan, who's currently viewed as the top receiving prospect in the draft. The other interesting part of this is that the Jets would pick Membu over Will Campbell, the tackle prospect out of LSU, who is widely viewed as the top tackle prospect in the draft. Now, of course, that doesn't mean a whole lot. I mean, there have been plenty of instances in the past where a guy's been a consensus top player at his position, and the second or third guy has ended up having a better career. I mean, you could go back. One example that really stands out in my mind is 2014, when Jadeveon Clowney was supposed to be the transcendent talent, and Khalil Mack was supposed to be behind him. And Khalil Mack ended up having a better career than Jadeveon Clowney. Khalil Mack ended up being the transcendent talent. And
I know it.
I knew you were going to say. I knew you were going to say that one, brother. Yeah. But we'll get to that in just a second. But he makes a point. John makes a really, really good point. And one thing I always say, too, with new coaches, and we're going to stay in New York and talk about coaches just trying to save themselves in a second. But one thing I will say about coaches that take over and they don't have like the first or second pick, it seems like without fail, they always just go, we need to build a street. We need to build a bridge. We need to work on infrastructure. You cannot go wrong, man, if you draft a really, really solid offensive lineman or a really, really solid defensive lineman. And it seems like the Jets are sitting right there going to do the same thing.
I mean, isn't that what Tennessee should also be doing? I mean, it's not like their offensive line was great last year. Yeah, they have Jeffrey Simmons, but they just got rid of a pass rusher and Harold Landry. That's what Tennessee probably should be doing. I know Cam Ward had an outstanding season, but is the infrastructure, as you mentioned, there for a rookie to come in and have success? I would say no. You look at Cleveland. Okay, they probably have a better infrastructure, certainly some talented players there. That would make sense to get a quarterback, especially for them. Like Ward makes more sense for what they have, as they're only a year removed from being a playoff team. And they do, again, have plenty of talent on that roster. Whereas Tennessee, that's not the case. And bringing in Cam Ward's not going to change anything. They're going to still be in the top 5 this time next year in a draft. And hell, maybe drafting number 1 overall once again. So it is smart. And it's probably a blessing to not be in the top 5 in a position like for the Jets to get a quarterback, unless they're interested in Jackson Dart or maybe Shedeur Sanders falls back, that they have no choice but to focus on the things that actually win football games, which is the trenches. If you don't have an offensive line, it doesn't really matter who's back there at quarterback. And obviously it matters at the end of the day, but you have to have the guys in front and also the guys on the outside to help them out. And that will not be the case in Tennessee. And right now it's not really the case in New York. So that's why they have Justin Fields and why they're probably going to do the smart thing for once as an organization.
And that smart thing can actually benefit who we talked about earlier in Breece Hall. They get another lineman, even if they get another running back to help you. Breece, 15 carries behind a really good offensive line is better than 21 carries behind a not so good offensive line, especially if it means you start to win games. And if they want to be a multiple running back team, does not preclude them from paying you and actually keeping you around to be one of, wait a minute, multiple running backs in the future. I'm telling you, those two things can actually jive together. You mentioned Jackson Dart. Well, I'm glad you did. Sometimes you, Julian, I'm going to tell you, man, you're so smart, man, and you get ahead of yourself. I'm telling you, you mentioned Jackson Dart, and we mentioned the other team in New York. My man Jordan Reed was on with Patricia Traynor of Locked On Giants, and they talked about the Giants draft and some of the things that they are looking at for the NFL draft. Remember now, they picked number 3, but they might not take a quarterback early. What if they don't? What will be available? Check this out.
Jackson Dart has also kind of been rising up the boards, or so it seems. Where does he fall into the conversation?
He's a second-round quarterback to me, just because of the transition process. I think that's going to take a little bit longer than some of the other guys in this class, just because of the offense that he played in. It really didn't prepare him a whole bunch from a read standpoint as far as what he's going to be doing on the next level. And Lane Kiffin does an incredible job of scheming a lot of wide receivers open in that offense. So he definitely a lot of times didn't have to go past his first or second option in his progressions a whole lot. So that's going to be a big adjustment for him. Also consistently playing under center as well. That's another adjustment that he's going to have to make, along with the other quarterbacks in this year's class at the top as well. So there's some things that give me some reservations as far as from a transition period with him. I think it's going to take a little bit more time than Ward and then also Sanders.
Man, we talk about quarterbacks now like we expect everyone to be an instant success. I remember when it was already an unwritten rule that a rookie quarterback wasn't going to be ready. I mean, Josh Allen wasn't ready. Patrick Mahomes wasn't ready. Yeah. This has changed in the last 6 or 7 years where they expect everyone to come in and play like Jaden Daniels, or he's an afterthought in the draft.
Yeah, you got to think too, like the schemes in college used to be so different than the schemes in the NFL. Like air raid quarterbacks were guys that could not come in and have success because they would have to be primarily under center, and that's changed. You've seen Jared Goff, who played in Sonny Dykes' air raid scheme in Cal. He's had a ton of success. You look at Patrick Mahomes, who played in the air raid scheme down there at Texas Tech, where that's really where it's been famous and been known. Baker Mayfield, kind of the same way when he was there. And of course, with the OU, these guys come in the league and they've had success early on. And I think it's a lot easier now where, yes, of course, I mean, the receivers are schemed open. You tell me Kyle Shanahan doesn't scheme guys open, that Sean McVay doesn't scheme guys open too. Like that happens across the league. Ben Johnson. So they're going to do it. Now, a lot harder in the NFL than in the SEC when you're playing against Arkansas. I totally understand that. I think Dart is an NFL quarterback. Obviously, I don't think he's going to be necessarily a starting quarterback. Maybe it's an opportunity down the road, but I do think it's kind of crazy. And this is where there's just like that schism between the college people and the NFL people, where the draft folks are like, oh yeah, man, like Dart, that's that guy. The college people are like, really? Did you watch him play at USC and Ole Miss the last 4 years? Good player, tough as nails, good leader, but come on, like that's probably not going to be your franchise guy. Can he start? Certainly down the road, but is he going to be who you want to build around? I don't think so.
Yeah, they made a lot of noise about not making the playoffs, and I recall watching the game where they flat out outplayed Florida and they lost. And most of it was because of Jackson Dart and his boneheaded plays down the stretch. And then Lane Kiffin kept trying to give the ball to J.J. Pegues on third and fourth and short, and he kept getting stopped.
Yeah.
They gave Florida every opportunity to beat them, and Jackson Dart had a whole bunch to do with it. And right, wrong, or indifferent, stuff like that kind of sticks with me. And that's why NFL scouts have a tougher job than I do, as opposed to sitting here talking about it. We're going to talk about something else, man. Talk about the Bucs. Julian was featured with Locked On Bucs, where they gave the Carolina Panthers, Dave Canales and Bryce Young, a lot of love. We're not going to replay the clip. We're just going to ask Julian to do a rewind and tell us exactly what he told James Yarko. And then is Dallas trying to figure out a way to do something different while a whole bunch of things remain the same? Let's discuss it here on Locked On NFL. Hey, now today's show is brought to you and sponsored by TurboTax. This message is from Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering if you were going to get any money back. Remember? And then waiting and wondering and worrying some more. Now, Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert that gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day and all the things you have to do. An expert who will find every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. All so you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now, this is Taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live, a full service, real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. All right, moving along on this marvelous Monday here, talking to Julian Council of Locked On Panthers about the Panthers. I often love by doing this show, you get to talk about the teams that's always in the news. We'll talk about Dallas in just a second. You can focus on a city like we did in the first segment with New York. The teams that get left out are the teams that people think are right in the middle of a transition. I always love those teams that ended the season hot, teams that changed the narrative about who we thought they were. And I think Carolina was one of those teams that actually did that over the second half of last season. Not only did they change our minds about them, they may have changed some people in the division. My man, James Yarko with the Tampa Bay Bucs and Locked On Bucs set this up. We're going to use his introduction of my man Julian to set this up so Julian can come back and tell me why am I feeling all mixed inside and feeling good about those Carolina Panthers. Hang tight. Watch this.
What's been going on in Carolina, talking about their offseason moves, talking about what they're going to do in the draft, but really taking a look at where they are compared to the rest of the division. And obviously, I wanted to start the conversation off with the quarterback because this was an impressive team down the stretch last year. Dave Canales, Bryce Young, they were trending up.
Stop right there. And I want to bring you in here because I have often gotten on Dave, not Dave Canales, but Dave Tepper. I've gotten on him a lot, right? But when somebody does something that's right, even if they did it by accident, I have to acknowledge it. I think Dave Canales is the right coach for the job. And I think they've also hit on some things in terms of their infrastructure that allows this year to be one of those years where people look at Carolina like, hey, man, I don't know if we want to play them. Am I right or am I wrong?
Yeah, that's a possibility based off of the final 9 games. And you do have to give David Tepper some credit. And that's not a guy I give a lot of credit to if you listen to my show, because he is taking a team. When he bought it, the Panthers were coming off the playoff appearance in 2017, and they have not come close to reaching the playoffs since he bought the team in the summer of 2018. And he has completely ripped this thing down to the studs. The fan base is as out as they have ever been. Now, of course, there's a little bit of hope based off of how the season ended. But you look at what he's been able to do, where he struck out with Matt Rule. Frank Reich didn't work out. Now it looks like Dave Canales, after 1 year, and with the partnership with Dan Morgan, that it's starting to finally make some sense. Like the same thing kind of happened with the soccer team here in town and the MLS team, Charlotte FC, where he had hired a coach. That guy lasted 14 matches, hired his assistant who had MLS experience. That lasted a year, then hired someone who had Premier League experience, had success over in Europe, and then brought him here, and now they're fourth in the standings with the playoffs last year. So third time seems to be the charm for David Tepper when it comes to his head coaches. You would hope that it wouldn't take him so long, but he still is a very new owner in the NFL, and it does take some of these guys some time to understand what the right and wrong things are to do. And it appears, at least on the soccer side of things, he's gotten it down. And football side of things, based off of how Bryce played in the second half of the season, some of the moves they've made so far this offseason, that it's possible that it's going to be third time the charm as well here in Carolina with that head coach and his second general manager, and maybe in the NFC South that's still pretty wide open, that Carolina could be right there in contention this year, provided that they can make a couple more moves in the draft and the guys that they sign do pan out this upcoming fall.
To their credit, I said last year that I thought Carolina and the Patriots had the two worst records in the league. Carolina's picking eighth. They're not picking first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. They're picking eighth, so that's a credit to them. The other thing is sometimes moving in silence where you can just do your job is the best thing. And I say that to segue into this. Dallas is never silent. Dallas got everybody and their brother doing podcasts and all of this stuff. I don't usually make 30 visits because I've seen situations where dudes visited teams that never had any intention of picking them. And I know Jaguars that got picked on day 2, they never had a 30 visit or an interview or anything else with the team. So
you can't take all 30 players. So
no, you can't. So, but I will tell you this. It sounds like, based on the visits the Cowboys are getting, that they're looking for something that is intangibly different this year. Listen to the boys from Locked On Cowboys.
30 visits are happening across the NFL right now. What is a 30 visit, and why is it specifically important for the Dallas Cowboys?
It's usually kind of a professionalism test, right? Like they're kind of making note of all the little things that the person is doing when they show up, how they dress, how they act, how they're talking to the staff, how they talk to, they'll get introduced to the training folk. They'll get introduced to the equipment managers, how they interact with those folk probably dictates, kind of gives you an idea, an insight, how these people treat, the small folks in the building, because all of that matters. The 30 visit is an opportunity for Jerry and for Will and for Steven and for Brian to look the player in the eye and kind of get an idea for themselves what the person is like.
Now, to credit with the Dallas Cowboys, back in the day, they said, what is it, a criminal organization ring? It's a Dallas Cowboy huddle. All that kind of stuff when Dallas had dudes staying out all night, getting substance abuse problems, and the cats getting pulled over for weed. We even had situations where there was wrecks involving people, and we ain't going to get started on all of that stuff. Dallas hasn't really had a lot of that. But what they have had is they've had a lot of fighting amongst each other on podcasts. They've had things that have come out since players left, like DeMarcus Lawrence, where you can tell him and other great players on the team probably didn't like each other very often. Are they actually looking to try to fix the etiquette of the team with the same old people that just keep being attention, who's pick-me's with the media? How do you fix one without changing yourself first and foremost?
Yeah, I would think that the ownership would be first and foremost the ones that have to set and establish the culture that's going to be there within the organization. And when Jerry's out there talking all the time, there's always going to be this kind of sensationalized media aspect of being a Dallas Cowboy. And there's always going to be kind of like the muckrakers out there talking about what's going on within that building. And it's kind of hard to get away from. And you got Brian coming in there, hopefully that he can find a way to kind of calm things down, establish his own kind of culture. It's not like Mike McCarthy was very talkative. I don't imagine that Brian Schottenheimer really will be either. But I think the leaders in that locker room, Micah Parsons has his own deal with Bleacher Report. He's always talking. And of course, he had to respond to what Marcus Lawrence had to say. Dak's pretty quiet. We'll see, man. It's always going to be a soap opera with Dallas. I don't think it's ever going to change as long as Jerry is in charge and he's doing the fan visits every single week on the radio. So they can try, but these guys are probably just going to take the lead of the owner, and that will be to say whatever, whenever.
I got a buddy of mine that's a preacher, and I always tell him it's an oxymoron that he's a Cowboy fan. And he goes, everybody wants to be a star. I said, sometimes that's the problem. We don't need everybody to be. I wish they took them stars off the helmet until they earned them, but Jerry won't do that because you know what? The star is their brand. So it's branding over winning games, I guess, man. We'll figure out what Dallas is going to do and if this change in the approach of who they're looking for and looking at will actually help the culture. All right. We got to get to the have and have-nots. And by the haves, I mean the Eagles and the have-nots, the Titans. And don't worry, I know the Jaguars ain't too much better, but in this case, it's the team picking last and the team picking first, and how their fortunes are so different and their outlook is absolutely different. We'll discuss that and more here in just a second on Locked On NFL. Today's show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Me too. Between dining out, online shopping, my wife, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center so you can track all your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Easy collaboration, man. Look, managing your money with your partner is smoother than ever. Yeah. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Right on for that. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money and use the code Locked On NFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's Monarch Money, code Locked On NFL for half off your first year. All right, moving on to the third and final segment, which is the have and have-nots. Tennessee Titans and the Philadelphia Eagles. Looking at this draft, totally different. The Eagles are just going to sit back, and we'll talk about them in just a second, and just say, okay, who y'all going to be dumb enough to let fall to us that we can plug in? And the Titans don't have that luxury. The Titans need a leader. The Titans need a quarterback. It looks like that's exactly what they're going to get in the draft. Here's my man Tyler Roland talking about who he thinks they won't get in the draft.
The Tennessee Titans have canceled their private workout with Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter. And folks, if you didn't know already, it's becoming even clearer and even more certain that the Tennessee Titans are drafting Cam Ward #1 overall. And look, Cam Ward has shined throughout the process. The tape is great. Is Cam Ward the home run, obvious #1 pick like we've seen in past drafts, like a Joe Burrow, like a Trevor Lawrence, like an Andrew Luck? Some people would say that he is. I would say it's not quite that clear, but the reality is when you play quarterback the way that he does, you have the tape to lean on that Cam Ward does, and then you combine the football character that he's shown throughout the process to the Tennessee Titans. How could you pass on that guy at #1 overall and get your quarterback of the future? You simply can't. So it's becoming more obvious around the NFL. If you're not willing to believe it at this point, I don't know what else to tell you. But Cam Ward is the Tennessee Titans quarterback of the future.
I don't think either Shedeur or Travis did something to scare Tennessee off. I just think Tennessee knows what they're doing, and they're just going to spend most of the rest of their time figuring out what they're going to do in the other rounds. And they told those dudes, hey, man, we've seen all we needed to see. And I thought it was Cam Ward before those workouts.
Did Tennessee make the decision, or did Dion, who's been saying the whole time that he's not going to let Shedeur or Travis go somewhere where he doesn't like the organization, did he make the decision? Because, like, let's be real. Like, Tennessee, as I mentioned earlier in the show, is not a place where you would want to go as a young quarterback. And it's not a place fine for Travis Hunter. He'll be okay, whether he plays full-time corner, full-time wide receiver, or both, but still, is that the organization? Because all I've seen is Amy Adams Strunk, the owner there, make terrible decision after terrible decisions. You had a good general manager in John Robinson. Yeah, he missed on some draft picks. He traded away A.J. Brown, and then she fired him after they got blown out by the Eagles when A.J. Brown went off. And then Mike Vrabel was telling her, Ran Carthon, good dude, he's not ready to be a general manager. Amy didn't want to listen to Mike. She fired Mike. Ran Carthon out a year later. Now Mike's up there in New England, and I'm sure the Patriots are going to win some games. And you got a coach now, Brian Callahan, who has no business being a head coach in the NFL, has that look on his face where he's like, I cannot believe I have to do this for another year. Yeah, makes me think that it was Dion saying we're good here more so than Tennessee saying we're too good to talk to Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders. Where do the Titans get off by not doing their due diligence by doing that? No, this is totally a Deion situation, in my opinion.
Ah, nice. That's a fresh and new approach. I didn't even think about that. The Deion probably could have told him, don't worry about it. We don't want to come there anyway, type of deal. But I'm not going to put words in Coach Prime's mouth, but it sure does feel like you're on to something and you're tracking to something. By the way, shout out to the Titans for cheering for a way to get Vrabel out of there so they could get into the new world order of how to win football games. And then a team looking just like Tennessee used to look with defense and running the game, running the ball, get to the Super Bowl and win it. Talk about bad timing. All right, that team I'm talking about, the Eagles. That's what I mean by haves and have-nots. Titans are chasing for a franchise quarterback who might not be one, but that's okay because you take guys like that anyway these days. That's what it feels like, right? Listen to how the team that actually took a franchise quarterback and then doubled back and took his backup, who is now a franchise quarterback. Listen to what they're doing as we approach the draft.
If certain positions don't fall, if there's a run on certain spots and the best player available could be at a position that could really help Jalen Hurts in 2025, but also in the future, I don't hate the idea. It's not the number one thing that I'm gunning for, even if it is an offensive lineman, if it's a tight end, if it's a receiver. But I would understand all three moves, especially this year, if you think that they're going to need Jalen Hurts to carry them a little bit more, right? If they need to pass the football more, if they want to keep Saquon Barkley healthy, if let's say Mekhi Becton's departure and maybe Dallas Goedert as well, if he's not in Philadelphia, it ends up downgrading the offense at certain spots. And let's say maybe the defense isn't, I don't think it's going to be bad next year, but let's say it's not the number one ranked unit in football next year, and there's maybe some more flaws, some more growing pains heading into 2025. Jalen Hurts might have to carry this football team a little bit more, at least for the start of the season, kind of like he did in 2023. And if that is the case, I think trying to add and support him more through this draft is not a bad idea.
Ooh, I'm going to sit here and start feeling sorry for Philadelphia in a minute. Like, Jalen Hurts going to have to carry them. And last I looked, they still got just about everybody that they had. But the point that I want to make is very, very clear. I'm not knocking Lou for that. But I am, because you still have to continue to improve. I think the Eagles, while they do their due diligence and do a very good job of doing that, they're probably sitting there also saying, let me sit here and wait for the rest of you dummies to let somebody else slip and slide right to us at the end of this draft, and we're going to take him.
Yeah, I mean, that was Jalen Carter a couple of years ago. Now there were the dreaded character issues there, and there were at least something you could point to. We're typically, like with James Pierce Jr., still trying to figure out what the character issue is. There's nothing that's been pointed to, but yes,
just a mean guy, I guess, huh? Just kind of ornery, right?
I remember a couple of years ago, they also told us that CJ Stroud couldn't read. He was an idiot and couldn't play the position. And wow, what's he done? He's been outstanding. So much for your stupid test. But yeah, like Jalen Carter, he dropped and he's been an absolute menace. And everyone saw that coming as long as they could keep him on a straight and narrow. And I do think the fact that he was there with a bunch of old Georgia teammates and just the culture that they have there in Philadelphia, that's allowed him to have success. But teams that could have used Jalen Carter decided, no, we're not going to take him. And I understood the reasons why. But, man, come on. We've seen so many times where dudes have been doing some off-character kind of things off the field, and teams are looking the other way because they can ball. So let's not act all high and mighty come draft time. When you know if that dude does anything for you, you're going to look the other way every time you have a chance. But, yeah, Philly, they're not getting worse. So it's got to be great to be Howie Roseman, to be Jeffrey Lurie, and to be all those celebrity Eagles fans sitting there knowing that you can kick your feet up, wait for them to come down to you. And based off of history, you won't win the division this year because the NFC East never has the same division winner, but you're not going to be a team that's not going to go to the playoffs again next season. So, yeah, Philly's in a great spot, as they always are, it seems like.
The guy that could fall to him, Malachi Starks, and then they shoot Cooper DeJean out the corner full time and make Malachi Starks your slot or your starting nickel, since you lost C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Nick Emmanwori, I think that's how you say the kid's name, from South Carolina, a T-Rex that doesn't really have a position. Oh, yeah, just give Vic Fangio somebody like that, right? Or could it be a Walter Nolan or Luther Burden Jr.? And then we go, how the hell did he get there? Or could it be Booker, the guard out of Alabama? It seems like they do a good job. It's going to be somebody. Look at my face. It's going to be somebody that's going to fall, and you're going to go, how the hell did Howie Roseman do it? And it won't be Howie Roseman that do it. It'll be the other dumb GMs around the league that keep letting Howie Roseman do it to him. That's who it'll be. You won't be dumb if you watch Locked On NFL Draft with Damian Parsons and my man, Coach Keith Sanchez, because they'll probably be able to tell you the dude that I'm sitting there thinking that could fall to 32. Make sure you check it out and listen to that podcast each and every day so you do not miss an episode. We thank you for spending 31 minutes with us here on Locked On NFL. Julian Council, Locked On Panthers, me, Locked On Jaguars, and of course right here on Locked On NFL. We'll see you next Monday, same time. Well, I'll see you tomorrow. Julian will see you next Monday, same time, same place.